This is what the typical home screen on the iPhone looked like just a few years back. Identical icons, no widgets, and practically zero customization beyond rearranging your apps. Fast forward to iOS 18 and you've got interactive widgets, tinted icons, and the ability to resize apps and widgets, and so much more. And yes, these might seem like small changes, but they mark a big shift in Apple's design philosophy, one that's finally giving users more control. Ironically, the release of Apple Intelligence stole the spotlight last year, but it was more hype than substance, leaving genuine improvements overshadowed. But the bigger story here is that Apple's "we know best" era is fading away, and that changes everything. You see, Apple doesn't often take risks, especially with the iPhone, which is not just a cash cow for the company, but also the gateway to their entire ecosystem for many people. Big sudden changes risk pushing away people who depend on the phone daily. That's why Apple sticks to incremental updates and preserving the familiar feel while quietly refining. But under this less is more philosophy, Apple's had some massive wins. Think of the original iPhone, a single home button, no stylus, and a stripped down interface. At the time, it felt like it was radical in its simplicity, and critics wondered if users would get confused without a dedicated back key, but it changed the entire smartphone market. Another example is the iPad, which launched without a file system or USB ports, and people thought it was too limiting. And while that ended up being true, that strict design made it incredibly user-friendly and helped it dominate the tablet market for many years. But there is a flip side to all of this. Sometimes that same minimalism just doesn't do it for users who need more. Apple has now added USB-C and a file management system to their iPads and iPhones as well because of this, as well as pressure from competition and other reasons, of course. My point is that sometimes they take this less is more idea too far. Look at the MacBooks. Previous generations removed almost every port, forcing people to rely on adapters, which left a lot of professionals feeling annoyed. Apple's desire to keep things clean and streamlined, in this case, clashed with power users who wanted more customization and convenience. But that was the old Apple, and it seems like they're learning from their past mistakes. And that's exactly why iOS 18's new era of customization feels like such a pivotal shift from the old Apple way. But the real question is, how will they balance catering to power users without overwhelming the average consumers? So I'm not gonna go over all the iOS 18 changes, but there are a few specific ones that I wanna bring up that show the benefits of giving some users customization, but also some of the problems they'll be facing going forward as they try to balance simplicity and advanced functionality. So let's start with one of the most complained about changes to iOS 18, and that's the redesigned Photos app. And at first I was really annoyed with the redesign, probably because I was happy with how it was previously in iOS 17. But after some time and customizing it to my liking, it has grown on me. Originally, it felt like they were trying to do too much, but with the option to show and hide sections you don't want to use or you don't want to see, it's easy to customize it to your needs. But these added controls, like choosing between filters that change how your photos are displayed or which files are displayed, like photos or videos and screenshots, can make it harder, or at least less straightforward, to carry out simple tasks. So this example might be a small thing for some people, but look at the camera app. With the added camera functionality like shooting raw photos and video, it can really alienate users that don't use the advanced camera settings. Something like the redundant exposure control that appears at the top left of the camera app, it's pretty simple and tucked away, but then you realize that if you click the arrow to access more controls, it appears again along with the other controls. And you see what happens is that if all of these apps have one or two things that make them harder to use, the overall experience suffers in general. But this doesn't mean I'm against giving users more options. It's far from that, I'm all for it. But I think there's a way to strike a balance. I'll touch on more ways I think this is possible shortly, but first I want to touch on the future of iOS and how I think Apple's design choices will impact the overall experience for its users. So it's clear that we've hit a plateau in terms of hardware design. We'll always get incremental upgrades with the internals and performance, but as far as the outer design and functionality of the phone, it's been the same for a long time now. But that's fine because software really impacts the user's experience much more. iOS 19 rumors have started circulating, and articles suggest that it will have a big visual redesign that resembles the Vision OS, which is the Apple Vision Pro's user interface. But visuals aside, it said that iOS 18 was supposed to have the redesign, but was pushed back due to pressure they faced to release Apple Intelligence. With that said though, this leads me to think that if we're going by the idea that iOS 18 was designed to allow more personalization and iOS 19 will continue that, customization and functionality will be priorities. And of course, I'm just speculating, but Apple has hinted at this new approach prior to iOS 18 across all of their products, with updates like the addition of the action button, which is very customizable, and even shortcuts that was originally introduced in iOS 12 way back and has evolved over the years. But look, Apple needs to continue offering useful features to keep people buying their products. So I think that this is the natural progression of things going forward. With the rise of AI and all these companies offering so much, they'll need to adapt to stay at the top. So just humor me for a second. Say this is what Apple will focus on going forward. They still can't abandon what makes their products appealing to so many people around the world: simplicity. And I don't think they have to. This is where getting Apple Intelligence right, and more specifically a smarter Siri, can come into play. As we all know, Apple Intelligence hasn't really been the hit Apple wanted it to be, to put it nicely. So once they get it right, I think that's their trump card, to keep things accessible to everyone as features inevitably become more complex. Siri's ceiling and potential is so high. Like, Apple has all that data they can work with to train Siri and make it truly a useful assistant. Of course, no matter how advanced Apple software gets, a well-designed interface is still critical for everyday tasks. But imagine if Siri could handle all the complexity in the background so we don't have to fiddle around with the menus. Picture this. Hey Siri, set up my camera for a moody portrait, shoot in ProRAW, use a warm undertone and lower the exposure a bit. Instead of tapping through all the settings and filters, Siri would take care of it instantly. That's the kind of integration that keeps things simple for everyone, while still giving power users more control. Like I mentioned earlier, thoughtful design and other things like stability should always be a priority, but companies are still forced to evolve, and Apple is no exception. This could be how Apple redeems itself after Apple Intelligence, when they finally release a smarter Siri, which is supposed to be coming with iOS 19. At the end of the day, Apple can't stay still. They have to evolve. And it's clear that they're shifting towards more customization and deeper features, but they can still keep that hallmark simplicity that they're known for. iOS 18 is proof that Apple's "we know best" mindset is starting to give way to "make it yours," even if some features and overall the operating system feels a little rough around the edges. But with rumors of iOS 19 bringing a fresh redesign and a smarter Siri on the horizon, the real challenge is finding that balance, giving us powerful, personalized tools without overwhelming the people who just want their phone to work. If Apple gets it right, we'll see iPhone become both simpler and much more capable than ever. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, drop a like, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.